I discovered my husband bought a house for his second mistress. He thinks I'm clueless, but I've already packed his bags with evidence of his employee theft. Now his new home, a prison cell. His mistress. Too bad his mistress is the district attorney's wife. The spreadsheet on my laptop screen blurred as tears welled in my eyes. A single transaction of $24,750 stood out like a wound on our company's quarterly report. It wasn't categorized correctly. It wasn't authorized. And my husband Harrison, our company's financial director, had processed it himself while I was visiting my sister in Ohio. This doesn't make sense, I whispered to the empty office. Everyone had gone home hours ago, but something had kept me there, staring at numbers that wouldn't balance. A sixth sense, perhaps. Or maybe just 15 years of marriage to a man whose subtle shifts in behavior I'd been ignoring for months. Harrison was on another business trip to Chicago. Third one this quarter. I reached for my phone, hesitated, then set it back down without calling him. Instead, I followed the transaction, navigating through our company's financial system with the practiced ease of someone who had built this business from the ground up alongside her husband. If you've ever felt that gut instinct that something wasn't right in your relationship, you're not alone. Stories like Skylar's journey from suspicion to strength resonate with so many of us. If you're finding value in these narratives of women reclaiming their power, consider subscribing. It's completely free and connects you with others who understand what it means to trust your instincts and stand your ground. Now let's continue following Skylar's path to discovery. The money had been transferred to a vendor I didn't recognize. Meridian Consulting. I ran a search through our system. No previous transactions. No vendor application. No contract. Nothing. Just $24,750 vanishing from our accounts to an entity that seemingly didn't exist. I dug deeper, accessing Harrison's email through our shared company server. The search for Meridian Consulting returned nothing, which was odd for a legitimate business expense. But a search for just Meridian brought up a receipt in his personal email. A receipt for a woman's diamond pendant from Meridian Jewelers. $24,750. Exact match. My stomach clenched. The necklace wasn't for me. My birthday had passed months ago without jewelry, just a rushed dinner and Harrison's distracted conversation about quarterly projections. I'd never seen this pendant. Never worn it. Never even heard of Meridian Jewelers. I printed the receipt, hands trembling. The customer note at the bottom read, "For Valerie, all my love, H." Valerie. The name hit me like a physical blow. Our new marketing director. Young, ambitious, with razor-sharp cheekbones and a habit of touching Harrison's arm when she laughed at his jokes during meetings. I'd noticed, of course I had, but had dismissed the flickers of jealousy as my own insecurity. But now there was a paper trail. Harrison hadn't just gotten sloppy with his affair. He'd gotten sloppy with our money. Our company's money. The next morning I called in sick for the first time in years. While Harrison texted concerned messages from his conference, I began a methodical investigation of our personal finances. I spread bank statements across our dining room table, tracking every withdrawal, every charge. The pattern emerged quickly. $2,000 here, $3,500 there. Cash withdrawals that Harrison had explained away as business expenses he'd forgotten to get receipts for. I added them up. $97,400 over the past 12 months. Nearly $100,000 unaccounted for. Money that wasn't going toward our retirement, or the vacation home in Maine we'd been talking about for years. That night I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m. I slipped out of bed and went to Harrison's home office. His laptop was password protected, but I knew all his passwords. Or thought I did. His usual combination didn't work. 3 attempts later I was locked out. Another secret. Another betrayal. But Harrison was careless in other ways. His desk drawer contained a stack of mail he'd forgotten to hide. Credit card statements from an account I didn't know existed. Restaurant charges in town on nights he was supposedly working late. Hotel rooms charged in our own city. And then, buried at the bottom of the stack, a property tax assessment for an address in Oakwood Heights, one of the affluent neighborhoods across town. The listed owner was Summit View LLC. I'd never heard of it. I spent the next day at the county records office, where a sympathetic clerk helped me trace Summit View LC back to its formation 6 months earlier. The registered agent was a law firm I didn't recognize, but the paperwork listed my husband as the sole member. Harrison had created a shell company and used it to buy a house worth $850,000. A house that wasn't ours. A house I'd never seen. That night, I sat at our kitchen table until 3 a.m., a cup of cold coffee between my hands, staring at the stack of evidence I'd gathered. Printouts of bank statements, the jewelry receipt, the property records, the trail of Harrison's betrayal laid out in black and white. My phone lit up with a text. Harrison telling me his flight would arrive at noon tomorrow. Telling me he missed me. Telling me he loved me. Each word a lie. My first instinct was to pack my bags and be gone when he returned. My second was to confront him immediately, to call him at his hotel and scream until my voice gave out. I did neither. Instead, I made a decision that changed everything. I would not react emotionally. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would not give him any warning at all. Two can play this game, I whispered to the empty kitchen. And I've always been better with numbers than you, Harrison. I gathered the documents, created a folder on my laptop named Tax Planning 2025, something Harrison would never open, and began to make copies of everything. If Harrison was stealing from our company to fund his affair with Valerie, there would be more evidence. And I would find it all. The tears had dried on my cheeks. In their place was something colder, something harder. Harrison thought he was so clever building his separate life with our money. He thought I was oblivious, too trusting, too busy with our business to notice his betrayal. He had no idea what was coming. I placed everything back exactly as I'd found it and went upstairs to our bedroom. I changed into my nightgown, slipped between the sheets of our marriage bed and stared at the ceiling, making mental notes of what to look for next. Bank transfers. Company credit cards. Expense reports. By the time Harrison's key turned in the lock tomorrow, I would know everything. But he would know nothing of what I had discovered. Not yet. Not until I was ready to pack his bags, with all the evidence he would need for his new home. A prison cell. The morning after my discovery, I watched Harrison pack for what he claimed was a meeting with clients across town. He kissed my forehead absent-mindedly, his cologne too strong, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Don't wait up," he said, straightening his tie, the blue one I'd given him for our anniversary. "Might grab drinks with the team after." I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. "Have a good day, honey." 20 minutes after he left, I followed in my old Honda. The practical car Harrison always complained made us look less successful than we were. I parked 3 blocks from our office building and waited. At 11:45, Harrison emerged, checking his watch before hurrying down the street, not toward any client's office but toward Riverside Park. I trailed him at a safe distance, my heart hammering against my ribs. Harrison took a bench overlooking the water, checking his phone repeatedly. At precisely noon, Valerie appeared, her red dress bright against the green backdrop of the park. She sat beside him, closer than colleagues would, their shoulders touching. When Harrison brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering on her cheek, the last shred of doubt evaporated. I raised my phone and took pictures. Not for emotional torture, for evidence. Each touch, each intimate gesture documented with the clinical precision of someone building a case. Their lunch lasted 52 minutes. They kissed twice. Harrison's hand rested on her knee under the table. I captured it all, feeling strangely detached, as if watching strangers in a film. 3 days later, Harrison announced he'd be working late. Budget projections that couldn't wait. I nodded sympathetically while my stomach churned with acid. After he left, I opened the location-sharing app we'd installed years ago for safety during business trips. Harrison had never disabled it, another testament to his arrogance, his certainty that I would never check. The blue dot of his phone moved steadily across town, stopping at an apartment complex in Westfield, far from our office. I didn't need to follow him this time. The address matched the one listed on Valerie's employee paperwork. That night, I began creating a systematic record of everything. I purchased a new laptop that Harrison didn't know about, using cash withdrawn over several days to avoid triggering notifications on our joint account. I set up an encrypted email address. I started a digital folder with subfolders labeled meticulously: financial discrepancies, property records, evidence of affair, timeline of events. In our company's accounting system, I discovered Harrison had created 5 different fake vendor accounts over the past 18 months. Small consulting firms with legitimate-sounding names that had collectively received over $300,000 from our business. Money transferred to shell companies that ultimately fed into the Summit View LLC that had purchased the mystery house, and likely funded his affair with Valerie. I recorded everything without altering a single document, careful not to tip him off. I backed up files on encrypted drives hidden in a box of old tax returns, the one place I knew Harrison would never look. "You're quiet lately," Harrison remarked one evening as we sat through another silent dinner. "Everything okay at work?" I'd prepared for this. "Just tired. The Anderson account is taking more time than I expected." He nodded, relieved at not having to feign interest further. "Don't push yourself too hard." The irony might have made me laugh if the pain weren't so fresh. The next day I called Janet, my college roommate who now practiced family law in a neighboring county. We met at a coffee shop 30 miles from my home, where no one would recognize us. "This is thorough," she said, eyes widening as I showed her redacted copies of what I'd found. "Skylar, this isn't just grounds for divorce. This is embezzlement." "I know," I said quietly. "You need to protect yourself legally. If these funds were misappropriated from your company, you could be implicated." "What do I need?" Janet outlined everything. Bank statements, tax returns, business valuations, personal property inventories. I needed to secure copies of everything before Harrison realized I knew. She recommended a forensic accountant who specialized in high-conflict divorces involving businesses. "Don't confront him yet," she warned. "Men like Harrison, when cornered, can become destructive. You need to be fully prepared before making any moves." I followed her advice, meeting discreetly with the accountant who confirmed what I already suspected. Harrison had been systematically stealing from our company for years, not months. The financial damage was worse than I had initially calculated. The hardest part wasn't gathering evidence. It was maintaining normalcy. Smiling over morning coffee with the man who was destroying everything we'd built together. Discussing business strategies in meetings where Valerie would contribute ideas, her voice confident, her eyes occasionally meeting Harrison's with secret understanding. I endured dinners where Harrison checked his phone under the table, thinking I didn't notice. I pretended not to hear him take calls on our back porch, his voice dropping to a whisper. I feigned sleep when he slipped into bed at midnight, smelling of unfamiliar perfume poorly masked by the mouthwash he'd begun using religiously. Each moment of pretense felt like swallowing broken glass. Each fake smile stretched my patience thinner. But I persisted, building my case methodically, adding to my evidence folders daily. When the moment came to act, I would be prepared. "I was thinking we could take that trip to Napa Valley in the fall," Harrison suggested one evening, his hand covering mine across the dinner table. The same hand that had touched Valerie hours earlier. "Just the two of us. Like our 5th anniversary." "That sounds perfect," I lied, squeezing his hand with practiced affection. He smiled, satisfied with his performance as devoted husband. He had no idea that while he was orchestrating his secret life, I was quietly, meticulously documenting every aspect of it. The scales were beginning to tip. Day by day, piece by piece, I was reclaiming my power, not through confrontation but through silent, methodical preparation. Harrison thought he was the clever one, building his house of cards with my money, my trust, my love. Soon he would learn exactly how wrong he was. But not yet. For now, I would continue to watch, document, and wait. The time for action would come. 2 weeks into my silent investigation, I was organizing receipts in Harrison's home office when his phone rang. He'd left it on his desk while showering, an unusual carelessness that made me wonder if he was growing overconfident or simply exhausted from juggling his double life. The caller ID showed only MB. Not Valerie. Someone new. When Harrison emerged from the bathroom, hair still damp, he grabbed the phone and stepped onto the back porch, closing the door behind him. Through the kitchen window, I watched his body language. The way he turned away from the house, his shoulders hunched as if physically protecting the conversation from being overheard. I slipped closer to the window, pretending to water the basil plant on the sill. "Can't make it tonight," I heard him say, his voice low. "No, baby, I promise I'll be there tomorrow. I know I said that last time. I miss you too, baby." Not a term he'd ever used with me. Not a term he'd use with a business associate. The next day I called our office manager, feigning a migraine that would keep me home. Instead of resting, I drove to the Oakwood Heights address I'd discovered in the property records. The house was a modest Tudor-style home on a quiet street. Not ostentatious but certainly expensive. If Harrison was hiding one affair, why not two? And why purchase a house unless the relationship was serious? Or unless someone needed to be kept comfortable, kept quiet? I parked down the block, large sunglasses hiding most of my face, and waited. At 10:15 a.m. the front door opened. A woman emerged. Early 30s, stylishly dressed in casual clothes that still somehow looked expensive. Dark hair cut in a sleek bob, designer sunglasses, confident posture. She wasn't Valerie. She locked the door with her own key and drove away in a silver Audi. I followed at a distance to a yoga studio in the upscale part of town, then returned to my observation point near the house. 4 hours later, Harrison's BMW pulled into the driveway. He entered with his own key, carrying grocery bags. Domestic. Comfortable. He was making himself at home in his secret residence. He stayed for exactly 52 minutes before emerging, straightening his tie, checking his watch, resuming his role as busy executive. I sank lower in my seat as he drove past, unaware of my presence. The woman returned 2 hours later. Around 7 p.m., another car pulled into the driveway, a black SUV with government plates. I frowned, raising my camera with the telephoto lens I'd purchased specifically for this purpose. The driver's door opened and a tall man in a tailored suit stepped out. He looked familiar, distinguished gray at his temples, confident stride. He didn't knock before entering. Another key holder. It took me several seconds to place him. Richard Barnes. Our county's district attorney. The man whose campaign ads promised to clean up corruption and hold the powerful accountable. I nearly dropped my camera. The pieces clicked together with nauseating clarity. Harrison wasn't just having an affair with this woman. He had bought a house for the wife of the district attorney. I drove home in a daze, barely registering the familiar streets of our neighborhood. Harrison was already there, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, pouring himself a whiskey in our kitchen like a man without secrets. "You feeling better?" he asked, noticing me. "You look pale." "Just tired," I managed, the understatement of my life. That night, after Harrison fell asleep, I sat in our guest bathroom with my laptop balanced on my knees, researching Richard Barnes and his family. News articles, social media posts, charity gala photographs. I scoured them all. Madison Barnes. That's who she was. 15 years younger than her husband, a former model who now chaired fundraising committees and cut ribbons at gallery openings. Their marriage had been featured in the society pages of our local paper 3 years ago. The district attorney and the beautiful philanthropist, a power couple in our community. And Harrison had bought her a house. My husband was sleeping with the district attorney's wife. The recklessness of it stunned me. Harrison had always been calculated, careful. It's what made him an effective financial director. But this affair wasn't just personally destructive. It was professionally suicidal. If Barnes discovered the relationship, he'd have both motive and means to destroy Harrison completely. Unless I used this information first. I created a new subfolder in my evidence files, Barnes Connection. I added the photographs I'd taken, property records linking Harrison to the Tudor house, surveillance notes documenting his visits. My laptop screen illuminated my face in the dark bathroom as a plan began to crystallize. Harrison had stolen company funds, our funds, to finance his affairs. He'd committed financial crimes that fell directly under the district attorney's jurisdiction. And he'd compounded his stupidity by entangling himself with that very same prosecutor's wife. I couldn't have designed a more perfect self-destruction if I'd tried. The next morning I called Janet again. "I need to understand exactly how to report financial crimes," I said when we met at our usual out-of-town cafe. "Specifically to the district attorney's office." She raised an eyebrow. "That's a nuclear option, Skylar. Once you involve prosecutors, you can't control the outcome." "I'm aware," I said, stirring my untouched coffee. "But what if I told you the district attorney might have a personal interest in this case?" I explained what I'd discovered, watching her expression shift from professional concern to astonishment. "Harrison did what?" she finally managed. "With the DA's wife?" "Yes. That's..." She struggled for words. That's either the dumbest thing I've ever heard or some kind of death wish. It's leverage, I said quietly. For me. Janet leaned forward. Be careful, Skylar. This kind of situation, it's volatile. Barnes finding out his wife is cheating with a man who's also embezzling funds. There's no telling how he'll react. I don't plan to be reckless, I assured her. Just thorough. As I drove home, pieces of my plan locked into place. I wouldn't just expose Harrison's affair with Madison Barnes. I would present Richard Barnes with irrefutable evidence of Harrison's financial crimes. The personal betrayal would ensure the prosecutor's enthusiasm. The financial evidence would give him professional justification. Harrison had built himself a house of cards, and I now held the perfect breeze to collapse it all. The weight of what I discovered left me both exhausted and eerily energized. I gave myself exactly 1 week to finalize preparations before executing my plan. No more silent suffering, no more pretending. First, I needed to consolidate the financial evidence. I contacted the forensic accountant Janet had recommended, Elaine Winters, sharing access to copies of our company records through a secure server. This is meticulously documented, Elaine said during our confidential meeting at her office. Most spouses in your situation have suspicions but incomplete records. You've essentially done half my job already. I've had practice with financial documentation, I replied. It's been my job for 15 years. Elaine's analysis confirmed what I'd pieced together. Harrison had diverted $427,893 from our company over 18 months, using a sophisticated network of fake vendors and consulting fees. She prepared a comprehensive report detailing every transaction, every shell company, complete with visualizations that even a non-financial person could understand instantly. This report would stand up in any court, she assured me, sliding the bound document across her desk. Criminal or civil. I paid her fee in cash from my personal emergency account, one Harrison didn't know existed. The receipt went into my evidence folder. Another link in the chain I was forging around my husband's future. The next day brought an unexpected opportunity. Over breakfast, Harrison mentioned he had meetings downtown all day, followed by dinner with a potential investor. Don't wait up, he said, kissing my cheek. These venture capital guys like to talk late. Good luck, I said, my smile practiced and hollow. Instead of going to our office, I parked near Harrison's usual downtown restaurant. Sure enough, at 1 p.m. his BMW pulled into the lot. But he wasn't alone. Valerie sat in the passenger seat, her hand resting on his thigh as they laughed about something. I documented their lunch with my telephoto lens. The intimate touches, the way he leaned across the table to whisper something that made her blush. They left separately, Harrison checking his surroundings before kissing her quickly in the parking lot. Rather than returning to the office, Harrison drove directly to the Tudor house in Oakwood Heights. Madison Barnes was waiting at the door in a silk robe, pulling him inside with an eagerness that turned my stomach. He emerged 2 hours later, checking his watch, straightening his tie, the same routine I'd observed before. But today he didn't head home or back to the office. Instead he drove to Riverpoint Plaza, an upscale shopping center. He entered a jewelry store, emerging 20 minutes later with a small bag. At 7 p.m., Harrison met Valerie again at Montello's, the expensive Italian restaurant where we'd celebrated our 10th anniversary. I watched through the window as he presented her with a small jewelry box. She opened it, her face lighting up as she displayed a bracelet that caught the restaurant lights. The same evening, 2 women, neither of them his wife. I now had documented evidence that Harrison was juggling both affairs simultaneously, a fact that would be relevant not just to me, but potentially to both Valerie and Madison when everything fell apart. The next morning I made 2 crucial phone calls. First, to our company's corporate attorney, requesting an emergency board meeting for the following Monday. It's regarding financial irregularities that cannot wait, I explained, using the professional tone I'd perfected during 15 years of business negotiations. Second, a call to the district attorney's office, requesting a confidential meeting with Richard Barnes regarding a potential financial crimes case. I did not give my name, only indicated it involved substantial corporate theft. The receptionist scheduled me for Tuesday morning. With those appointments secured, I turned to the most personal aspect of my plan. Harrison would be attending an industry conference this weekend, his last business trip before his world collapsed. Once he left, I would pack his belongings. Not in anger, not in haste, but with the same methodical precision I'd applied to documenting his betrayal. Friday morning, I kissed Harrison goodbye, watching his car disappear down our driveway for what would be the last time he'd leave as my husband. I waited 30 minutes to ensure he wouldn't return for anything forgotten, then went to our bedroom closet. I pulled out the expensive luggage set we'd bought for our trip to Europe 3 years ago. I laid the largest suitcase open on our bed, the bed where Harrison had slept beside me while living a double life. There was something profoundly cathartic about folding Harrison's tailored shirts, his expensive slacks, arranging them neatly in the luggage he'd soon need. I worked methodically through his dresser drawers, his side of the closet, his bathroom cabinet. 15 years of marriage reduced to 4 suitcases and 3 boxes. In the inside pocket of the main suitcase, I placed a USB drive containing copies of all my evidence: financial records, photographs, the forensic accountant's report. Beside it, I added printed copies of the most damning financial documents, each one highlighting a different aspect of his theft. I also included photographs of Harrison with both Valerie and Madison, taken on the same day, tangible proof of his complete moral bankruptcy. Finally, I added a single sheet of paper with the date and time of his scheduled arraignment, a detail he wouldn't understand until it was too late. Each item was placed with deliberate care, not thrown in anger. This wasn't an emotional outburst, it was the execution of justice, prepared with the same attention to detail Harrison had once praised me for in business. By Sunday afternoon, everything was ready. Harrison's belongings waited by the front door, his life packed and prepared for its dramatic transformation. My documentation was organized for the board meeting and the district attorney. Digital copies were secured in multiple locations. I'd withdrawn my personal funds from our joint accounts and deposited them in a new account at a different bank. I poured myself a glass of the expensive Cabernet Harrison had been saving for a special occasion. Sitting on our sofa, I rehearsed what I would say when he returned tomorrow evening, expecting to find his dutiful, oblivious wife. Instead, he would find me, clear-eyed, fully informed, and holding all the power he thought was his. The suitcases by the door weren't just packed with clothes and evidence. They were packed with consequences, with justice, with the end of one life and the beginning of another. I raised my glass in a silent toast to the woman I was becoming. Someone who refused to be a victim, who had transformed betrayal into strength. Tomorrow Harrison would finally discover that I was anything but clueless. Harrison's key turned in the lock at precisely 6:18 p.m. Monday evening. I sat in our living room, dressed in the navy blue suit I wore for our most important business presentations, a glass of water untouched on the coffee table before me. His luggage stood by the door like sentinels. "Skylar," he called, his voice echoing through the foyer. "Why are my—" He stopped short when he saw me, his gaze darting between my face and his packed belongings. "Welcome home," I said, my voice steadier than I'd imagined it would be. "Your things are ready." "What is this?" His briefcase slipped from his fingers, hitting the hardwood with a thud. "Are you leaving me?" A small, bitter laugh escaped me. "No, Harrison. You're leaving. Now." I stood, straightening the jacket I'd chosen so carefully for this moment, and handed him a manila folder containing copies of the evidence. Just enough to make my point, not everything I had. "Open it," I instructed. His hands trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages. I watched the blood drain from his face as he saw the photographs of himself with both Valerie and Madison, followed by printouts of the unauthorized transfers, the fake vendor accounts, the property records for the Tudor house. "How did you—" he started. "I've known for months," I interrupted. "About Valerie. About Madison Barnes. About the money you've stolen from our company. From us." His expression shifted from shock to calculation. I could almost see him formulating denials, excuses, counterattacks. "Skylar, this isn't what it looks like. I can explain." "Save it for your lawyer," I cut in. "You'll need a good one. The board knows. They're meeting tomorrow." Fear flickered across his face. "The board? What did you tell them?" "Everything about the finances. Your personal life is your business, but the money you stole from our company is theirs." Harrison stepped toward me, his voice dropping to the persuasive tone he used to close difficult deals. "We can fix this, Skylar. Together. Like we've always done. There is no we anymore." I gestured to his luggage. Those contain everything you own in this house. The last page in that folder is particularly important. You should check it. His hand shaking visibly now, Harrison turned to the final page. The one with the date and time of a meeting I'd scheduled with the district attorney's office. You wouldn't, he whispered, real fear replacing the manipulative charm. I already have. The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime incongruous with the moment. Harrison's head snapped toward the sound. That's your ride, I said. I called you a car service. I didn't think you should drive in your emotional state. He stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Who are you? I met his gaze directly. I'm the woman who built this company with you. The woman who trusted you with everything. The woman who's taking back what's hers. The next morning, I walked into our company's conference room where the board members waited, faces grim. For 2 hours, I presented the evidence of Harrison's financial crimes, answering questions with composed precision. I concluded by outlining my plan to stabilize the company, emphasizing that I had been documenting the discrepancies for months while determining the full extent of the problem. We've known you for years, Skylar, said Martin, our most senior board member. But this is unprecedented. I understand your concerns, I replied. I'm prepared to step aside temporarily if that would make the board more comfortable while this situation is resolved. After a brief private discussion, they voted unanimously to keep me as acting CEO. The company needs steady leadership now more than ever, Martin explained. We trust you to provide that. I was walking to my car after the meeting when my phone rang. An unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell? This is District Attorney Richard Barnes. My heart skipped. I hadn't expected him to call personally. Thank you for the information your attorney provided this morning, he continued, his voice controlled but with an undercurrent of intensity. I wanted to let you know that we've issued a warrant for your husband's arrest. The financial evidence is compelling. I understand, I said carefully. Pause. There appears to be additional information regarding my personal life included in the documents. That information is separate from the financial crimes, I replied. I believed you should have all the facts, but my complaint focuses solely on the corporate theft. Another pause. I appreciate your discretion. His voice had changed, less official, more human. This can't be easy for you either. No, I agreed. It isn't. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Harrison Mitchell, prominent local businessman, arrested on multiple counts of embezzlement and fraud. The article mentioned the district attorney's personal involvement in expediting the case. That night, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by spaces where Harrison's things had been. The silence was profound, uninterrupted by his footsteps, his voice, his lies. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, as if I'd survived a long illness only to discover the recovery would be equally challenging. I wandered through rooms that suddenly seemed too large, too empty. In our bedroom, I opened drawers where his clothes had been, ran my fingers over the vacant spaces he'd occupied. 15 years of marriage. Gone. Not because of what I'd done, but because of what he'd done, what he'd been doing for years while I built our life, our business, our future. The vindication I'd anticipated was there, but muted beneath waves of grief for what had been lost. Not just my marriage, but my trust, my certainty, my vision of our shared history. I slept in the guest room that night. 6 months later, I stood at the window of my office, the corner office that had once been Harrison's, watching downtown traffic flow below. The company had not just survived but thrived under my leadership. We'd weathered the initial publicity storm, been transparent with clients, and emerged stronger with several new contracts secured. Harrison awaited trial, bail denied due to flight risk. The district attorney's office had built an airtight case, with Richard Barnes personally overseeing the prosecution. Madison Barnes had filed for divorce almost immediately after Harrison's arrest. I'd sold our house, unable to continue living with its memories. My new condo overlooked the river, its clean lines and empty spaces a canvas for the life I was creating. One decision, one day at a time. The divorce was finalized last week. My lawyer called the settlement a complete victory. I wasn't sure such a thing existed in cases like mine, but I had emerged with full ownership of the company and most of our assets. Harrison wouldn't need them where he was going. What surprised me most was the strength I'd found, not just for surviving betrayal but for rebuilding afterward. I'd discovered resources within myself I hadn't known existed. The woman who had methodically tracked her husband's betrayal, who had packed his bags with evidence, who had reclaimed her business and her dignity, she was someone I was still getting to know. As I turned back to my desk, my assistant buzzed. "Your 3 o'clock is here, Ms. Mitchell." I smiled at the sound of my name, at the choices it now represented. "Send them in," I said. "I'm ready." Skylar's story reminds us that our greatest strength often emerges from our darkest moments. If her journey of resilience and reclamation resonated with you, I'd love for you to join our community of supporters. Hit subscribe to receive more powerful stories of transformation and justice served. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to rebuild after betrayal? What gave you the strength to move forward? Your story matters too, and this community is here to listen. Thank you for being here today, and I'll see you in the next empowering chapter.